Week 1 of college football was one for the ages, but not to be outdone, the NFL is right on its heels. We got a lot to talk about this week, so let's get after it. This is Football Frenzy. Welcome to the Frenzy, everybody. It is the Iceman, Matt Freites. That is the coach, Brad Powell, as we have not only breaking down week 1 of college football, but we got the NFL coming up. So welcome to Football Frenzy, everybody. Brad, what's going on, buddy? Welcome to the Frenzy.
Iceman, happy to be here. Week 1 of college football behind us. Week 1 of the NFL ahead of us. Couldn't be happier. This is the only week. Well, actually, it might happen twice this year. This is the only week that I really give much of a crap at all about fantasy football. I'm taking on my father. So
Yes.
there's some stakes involved. But other than that, I couldn't even tell you who's on my team. I have Christian McCaffrey. That's all I know. So I want to sit here and drone on about who's on my fantasy team. Other than that, and it's a matchup against the old man. So there's always a little more interest. But pumped all around, man, for another great weekend of football. And thank goodness for the NFL, because the college slate this weekend, minus a couple of games, pretty weak.
Yes, and by the way, if there are two things in sports that people care nothing about, that people talk way too much about, it is who is on your fantasy team and who you have winning the NCAA tournament, and you can take those to the bank. That we will make sure to talk about those things ad nauseum. Yes, I know. I did a fantasy football draft over the weekend. Just for full disclosure, I don't sound like myself. I was sick over the weekend. I'm still kind of nursing some congestion, and I drafted in a fever dream. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to win the whole league because I don't know anything about fantasy football. And because I wasn't paying attention all that much, I was just clicking things. Hopefully, we'll see, but nobody really cares about that. So hopefully that will be the first and last mention of fantasy football on Football Frenzy.
Yes, I agree. Absolutely. Moving on.
Yes, moving on, though. So college football this weekend, you said that week 2 doesn't have a great slate, but I think for all intents and purposes, week 1 was actually pretty damn good, don't you think?
Yeah, some excellent matchups. We had a couple more upsets. Some hit a little too close to home, right? But good week, good slate of football, good games. I think we learned a lot about a few programs. Georgia looked really stinking good. We talked about there not being maybe a clear-cut number one. They may have made a case for that on Saturday.
It's hard to deny. And Georgia, I understand for the first half, they didn't look like maybe we thought that they would look. I think you jokingly said that Georgia was already up 21 in crunch time last week. And I don't think that the final score indicated necessarily how lopsided the game was or how close it was even in the first half. Because, look, Clemson kind of held tough for a while. I think that their defense is pretty good. I don't know if Cade Klubnik is the guy that's going to get them there. But what I do know is that great teams excel in the second half, and Georgia certainly did that. They left no doubt. And I agree with you. They're the consensus number 1, but that's not really the story. The story this weekend, in my opinion, was the ACC. And, it's my home conference where the Hokies play, but Clemson didn't look very good. And honestly, not a lot of the teams that I think people thought were ascending teams in the ACC look good, except for Miami.
Yeah, unfortunately, your Hokies took one on the chin against Vanderbilt, which was rough. And then, you mentioned Clemson, Florida State taking 2 in a row to Boston College. And then the U, though, you're right, man. They looked really, really good. Granted, by all accounts, Florida's supposed to be down this year, and, Billy Napier's probably on his way out there. But they did what they were supposed to do. And that's all you can ask of a team that is on the rise. And so we'll see where they go from here. But I would say the ACC runs through Miami at this point.
I would say so. And I think Cam Ward is already maybe an early Heisman candidate. I mean, he had a great season last year. I believe it was at Wazoo. And he goes to the ACC, and he looked really good in his debut. But you said it, though, is that teams like Miami, who are constantly heaped praise and given expectations every year, they always fail in games like this. And they didn't do that. They not only won the game, they won it handily, to the point that Miami players were trying to recruit Florida players on the sideline.
That was hilarious, man. And I saw when I watched that video of them over there, because they had the high school kids down there, like in the end zone in a certain area, like staying on the field as they're walking off. They're like, come to the U, come to Miami, everything else. And how could you not see that and be like, yeah, I don't want to be a part of what just happened here? we're not even the best football. Florida isn't even the best football program in their state right now, let alone competing for national championships, which is something that when you go play, if you're a top recruit going to play somewhere in the SEC, you're going to compete for national championships. So it felt a lot like the old school a little bit seeing that. What do you
But
think?
if there isn't something that recruits the best, isn't not winning. And I understand today's NIL world and all that stuff, but I think there are a lot of players, especially ones that have a very high sense of competitiveness. They don't only want to get the bag, but they want to win. And I think
Yes.
that's why a lot of these players transfer so often, because it's not just about getting a bag and sitting on a bench. They want to go somewhere where they can be valuable, where they can win, where they can get that stardom. And Cam Ward did just that and proved it. And so Miami is looking at the state of Florida, as you say, that Florida State now looks like they're on a downturn, and how quick that downturn came from last season to now. Doesn't mean their season's over, but starting 0-2 makes it very difficult to have any sense of competitiveness when it comes to, are they going to make the playoff? And then you have Florida who's down. And so the U has a chance now to take a stranglehold on the state of Florida. And if they do so, that means that they're going to be powerful for quite a while, because they have a great head coach who I think may be figuring some things out. And now they have a recruiting pipeline, and that's huge for them.
Absolutely, it is, and there's tons of talent in Southern Florida.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, in the state of Florida as a whole, but Southern Florida is overflowing with high school football talent. And if you can recruit those kids and get them to stay home, which is what Howard Schnellenberger was able to do, and Jimmy Johnson continued it, and so on, you can build an empire there. And again, I know there's been speculation of how much the university is on board with the football program and how supportive are they. It's funny because there were conversations like that existed in Notre Dame. That how supportive is the administration really of doing the things necessary to help put a competitive football team on the field, but getting the right people in the right places and winning can start to change a lot of that, and you can get people to come around. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what transpires this year and then moving forward for Miami.
So if we can move on to my Hokies for a second, and if you'll indulge me for a minute.
Indeed.
So we do some reaction videos now on TikTok, and I think it's a fun addition to some of the things that we do. I mean, we like to analyze here, and we like our long form stuff. But over the weekend, I did something that I've not done in quite a long time, and probably since Justin Fuente's first year, where I got hopeful. I actually was excited for this team in a way that I pushed my normal realism aside. And as I got into this game, despite feeling a little bit of hesitancy about the game coming up and all that, I still felt like, all right, this is the year. This is the time where the Hokies are going to rise back again. And what I saw in the first half was awful. It was a completely ill-prepared football team, a completely ill-prepared coaching staff. Nobody looked like they knew what to do. Nobody looked like they knew how to adjust. And it's just, you cannot come out looking like that. And in the second half, they did come back, but there were too many mistakes. And the mistake that cost them the game essentially was having two number zeros on the field, giving them 5 yards. And that field goal was all the difference. It doesn't matter where it came in the game. At the end of the day, they were tied at the end of regulation. And the thing that sucks is this doesn't mean that their season is over, but what it does mean is that they are not the team that everybody thought that they were, at least not now. Maybe they grow into that, but it certainly gives me pause. It gives me pause because if Brent Pry were the kind of coach that I thought that he was, the team would never look like that. And I just was disappointed in how they looked. And I don't know if you agree, but first game of the season on the road against an SEC opponent that has been a perennial bottom feeder for the last 10 years, you cannot come out and look that unprepared.
No, you're right. And there's certainly plenty to be concerned about on the Virginia Tech front. Obviously, they have yet to arrive, right? I think we all were very optimistic about what we were going to see. We thought that they were going to, and they still could contend in the ACC. They've got some mistakes to fix, as you mentioned, but let's be sure to not discredit Vanderbilt too much, because
No.
they played well.
Yes.
And we talked about it. Clark Lee's coaching for his job. There's You're going to get his absolute best. And even as a bottom feeder, it's still an SEC job. And the places that you can springboard to from the bottom of the SEC are much more significant and impressive than a lot of other places. So let's not take away from them and their performance. And my goodness, man, Diego Pavia, the quarterback for Vandy,
Yep.
what a gritty dude, man. Like that
Mm-hmm.
guy balled.
Oh God, but like, can we not get a spy on the quarterback? I mean, how many times is he going to roll out and do that? And that's what was so frustrating is the game plan that Vanderbilt executed well is the game plan that the Hokies should have executed well with a bigger, taller, faster, stronger guy at quarterback. And that's what was so frustrating is it's like they didn't know what to do. A couple of times I almost texted you 1st and 10, hand off to Audric Estime because that's what it felt like. It's like 1st and 10, let's just hand it off every time when it's just not working. And you're absolutely right. I should give credit to Vanderbilt because their fans have supported them. They have been through it all. And you know what? Their game plan was better executed than the Hokies, fair and square. They made more plays than the Hokies did.
It
And
did it did feel
sucks.
like Virginia Tech was outcoached.
Oh,
Which is
100%.
disappointing when you really are optimistic about a guy like Brent Pry. It's incredibly disappointing to feel like you're outcoached. And athletically, you got to believe that Virginia Tech probably has better players, at least based on recruiting rankings and things. Maybe I don't know. That might be a bit of a stretch. I don't know,
I don't
but
know.
I agree though, man. Yeah, there were times where it looked like they were a little lost. Like they thought that they were going to show up and Vanderbilt was just going to roll over because they were supposed to lose, and that is definitely not what happened.
No. God, it was so frustrating. But the Virginia Tech is a microcosm of what the ACC kind of looked like this weekend, to where the only teams that really looked good were the middle to bottom teams who played inferior opponents, except for Boston College, except for Miami. I mean, Clemson
Yeah,
played Georgia, obviously.
Wake Forest and Virginia players at this week. I
I
mean,
don't even know. But
it's just like
my
the worst game ever.
this is just the way the conference is right now, and they're getting made fun of for being mid. And after this weekend, I can't necessarily disagree. But let's talk about somebody else who may have a mid football team, and that's Brian Kelly at LSU. And maybe that's hyperbole, but the funny part or the ironic part is you and I both said that this was going to be a matchup where can these defenses hold it together? How have these two guys recruited their defense? They both lost Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks. And I don't know if it was the defenses playing better, the quarterbacks just kind of getting into the rhythm. But I would say that defensively, I think they both look pretty good. But Brian Kelly's team, I don't want to say he got out coached, but it certainly looked like his team was not as prepared as you would think that they would be. And I have to give all the credit to Lincoln Riley. They made those plays at the end and won that football game. And they may actually have a real chance this year.
So that was a very Brian Kelly-esque performance. I've seen plenty of them. Those are games that, there was a lot of chatter amongst the Notre Dame faithful. Those are games that he lost while at Notre Dame a lot. Those types of games you would consider maybe like a statement game. And to come up short in that fashion, very on par, on brand. I think that
No bias at all, right?
much like Clark Lee, I'm grateful for what Brian Kelly did at Notre Dame. He resurrected them from sort of a really bad, dark place and won a lot of football games. He's the all-time winningest coach at Notre Dame. I mean, so
Oh, really?
you say what? Yeah, he's the
Oh,
all-time winningest coach at Notre Dame. So you say what you want about the guy, but he won a lot of football games. He just didn't win the right ones, I
yeah, I
guess.
was going to say he didn't win
Um,
the big one.
yeah. So, in regards to USC, much like we just talked about Clark Lee at Vanderbilt, Lincoln Riley's a guy that I think is coaching with a sense of urgency, if
Yes.
you will. And I don't know that you could say that Brian Kelly's on the hot seat um, this early. I mean, he's at the same mark as Lincoln Riley, but the SEC is also a different beast. I mean, they'll present a check. The boosters will present a check at halftime that's going to pay for your buyout to have you fired in the SEC. So
Talking to you,
anything's
Jimbo.
possible. Anything's possible. But I thought that game was going to be a track meet, and it wasn't at
No.
all. And I mean, so credit to both of them for getting their defenses to improve. Apparently, unless the offenses have regressed, but Definitely some improved defense. Kudos to I thought that's a game that you're not used to seeing a USC team win. I think it took a little toughness um to kind of to hang in there and win that game. And that's not something that USC's been known for in the recent past, is having that toughness about them. So credit to them for that. And we'll see. I mean, I hope USC's at the end of Notre Dame's schedule this year. So I hope they run the table, because I want that strength of schedule opportunity to be there at the end as a Notre Dame fan. So um, I want them to win them all. So we'll see how it goes.
One thing I think you can say is that Lincoln Riley does know quarterbacks, and Miller Moss, I believe,
Yeah.
he looked impressive to me. But I don't want to get crazy here, Brad. But did USC play? They played Big Ten football this weekend. It kind of felt like it.
Yeah. Well, I feel like when you play an SEC opponent, the SEC is known for being physical. I think you have to adapt your style of play somewhat. I mean, you can't play. I mean, we saw it all the time with like these high-powered offenses in the Big 12. We talked they never played offense in the Big 12, right? These Oklahoma teams, Oklahoma State. I mean, it's just high flying, 45-42 football games, and they'd run up against Alabama, and it's like you can't play that style of football. So I think you have to adapt your game plan a little bit. Maybe try to shorten the game against some of these more physical teams. But I, who knows, man? It's really tough to say. I think judging a team off one game, and this goes across the board with every team we're going to talk about, judging a team off one game is kind of unfair. I mean, but that's all we have to go off of at this point in time. I think here in a couple of weeks we'll have a better idea of how for real or not for real some of these people are. How bad are these losses? Maybe Vanderbilt freaking wins 10 games this year. Who knows? Maybe that was not a bad loss for Virginia Tech. Maybe LSU wins the SEC. I don't think so. But the best kind of the part we haven't mentioned yet about that game is Brian Kelly's reaction in the post-game press conference. Like it's so weird, because in a way it almost feels forced. Like, I'm angry. You know what I mean? And but at the same time, it's like, if you're gonna pretend that you're pissed, like that's not the route to go. Because not only did you kind of look like an idiot, but you also just probably lost the locker room if you haven't already. That's kind of the way that I took it, and I like that. It's funny. He says it's the first time he's been angry. Well, at his team at LSU, because I remember a couple years ago Notre Dame
Okay.
lost to Florida State, and at the end of the game, he was being interviewed on the field and said, "Well, I'm a big fan of execution, and perhaps our entire team should be executed tonight." So
He said it
I don't know.
nicely.
He did. He was very polite.
I Brian Kelly, it's funny because when we were watching this game, my wife and I were watching the game, and I said something flippantly about like, oh yeah, Brian Kelly, typical. And she's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, great football coach, but great asshole too. Like
Oh, yeah.
pretty, she's like, well, why? And I'm like, just Google Brian Kelly and you'll
Well,
probably
he's from the
find,
Northeast.
well, there you go. But I was like, probably just like, there's just so many things you could say. And at the end of the game, she watched as some of the LSU players were sticking around on the bench. She's like, why do you think the players are sticking around on the bench? I'm like, well, what hurry they're going to be to get yelled at in the locker room? And obviously it was true. But Brian Kelly, to me, never came off genuine in any way. And so that reaction seemed like something that he thought about on the way to the press conference. Like, I'm going to do this. And I think the reason being is because he knows he can lose games like that at Notre Dame, and that's not a shot at Notre Dame. But I think he can lose those games because Notre Dame has the ability, with not being in a conference, to still get into the playoffs, still be relevant because of the brand. LSU is a great football team, but I would say that they're not as much of a brand as Notre Dame is. And so in the SEC, it's all about winning. And you have to win in order to get into the playoff. He can't just be Notre Dame and get into the playoff by the virtue of being Notre Dame. He's got to be feeling the pressure, no?
Oh, I would think so. I mean, Notre Dame has uh, a passionate fan base that cares a lot. That's unrealistic at times, like a lot of other programs. The difference between Notre Dame and the SEC, for example, is in the SEC, like they will punch their grandma in the face to win a football game.
Yes.
They do not care at all. And they say it just means more, and it really does. There's no denying that. It's a great slogan because it's accurate. And I'm not here trying to stroke the SEC by any means. That's
Just do it,
just the
man.
truth, man. It's
Just do
just the
it.
freaking truth. Um, I mean, people. One of the reputations that Notre Dame has is whenever someone comes to play at Notre Dame, an opponent, all the fans talk about how welcoming and nice the Notre Dame fans are. That's not you know what I mean? Like that's
Nope.
not like what you want to hear. It's not a hostile environment at all. I mean, now they get into the game and they're passionate and stuff like that, but I mean, it is not what we saw at Kyle Field on Saturday night when Notre
Oh
Dame played
no.
Texas A&M. It is
Gig
not
'em.
what you're going to see in Death Valley and Baton Rouge or anywhere else across the SEC for that matter. So, granted, I mean, most Notre Dame fans can read as opposed to maybe some SEC fans, but I
Ooh.
think that the level of intensity it's different, man. It's different.
Well, let's talk about Notre Dame. Notre Dame looked impressive, I think, in a game that you said was going to be tough. And I think that it was tough, but Notre Dame certainly defensively showed that they could step up to the plate in an environment that it was ready. Like Kyle Field was ready to go. And it was one of the coolest things I've seen in quite a while. Actually, the fans were ready to go. And this is the kind of game. This would you say that this is a game Brian Kelly would have traditionally lost?
Yes, 100%.
And guess what? Marcus Freeman, by the way, if you have not checked out the hype video of him getting hyped up before the game, you should do so because it'll get you hyped up for any day at work. But Notre Dame performed and they looked like they earned that top 5 ranking. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think that as a Notre Dame fan, and we knew that there was going to be a certain narrative out there nationally. So now, since Notre Dame won, now it's well, Texas A&M must not be very good. I mean, that's just the way it goes when you're a program like Notre Dame, and until they beat somebody like in Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State, that's just where it's going to be. That's fine. Hopefully, Notre Dame gets that opportunity at some point in time. But um, I also think it's funny though how the narrative, even towards Texas A&M and their players, the narrative is, okay, they must not be very good. The quarterback must not be very good. The offensive coordinator, Colin Klein, must not be very good. Like, can we give a little credit to the fact that they played against one of the best defenses in the country? Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to like Notre Dame to admit that that's one of the best defenses in the country. And I mean, they were a top 10 defense last year. They returned a couple All-Americans. Like they're an elite defense. You can't deny that. And I understand that people in the SEC don't like to acknowledge that about a Notre Dame, but that's just the cold hard truth. And sure, like did they make some mistakes on offense that were probably like uh, self-imposed errors that had nothing to do with Notre Dame? Sure. Like the one interception, the quarterback essentially overthrew the receiver right into the arms of the safety. So like in that case, like you can't really say, well, Notre Dame made a play, but they had a guy in place to make a play when the opportunity presented itself. But yeah, bad throw. Uh, but what caused that bad throw? Was there a pass rush? We could go on all day, but about the game itself, I thought it went just the way I thought it would, man. A defensive struggle. I thought both offenses would struggle early to get it going. It would just kind of come down to like who could sort of figure it out first. A lot of penalties, man. Like that's thing. If you looked at the stat sheet and took the score off the top and was like Notre Dame was like 2 of 17 on third down or something like that. Um, I think they had like 11 penalties for like almost 100 yards or something. I mean, there was a lot of things that you'd be like, there's no way they won this game. And that to me gives me optimism. It's like, man, they made these errors and still won by 10 on the road against a good opponent. And Texas A&M is going to get better. Mike Elko is going to get that going down there. And I don't think that this game should be an indictment on him or that program because I think they're going to be just fine. If anything, it put unfair, unrealistic expectations on him in this game, and the coaching staff. Again, that's just the way these people are wired, and that's fine. There's people that were ready to, I was telling my dad, I go, I guarantee you there's people on the message board when Texas A&M went down and kicked the field goal. They're probably ready to fire Al Golden. You know what I mean? Because they gave up a field goal on the opening drive. I mean, that's just fans are crazy. Notre Dame's under Al Golden. They've always had a bend don't break defense, and that's what it is, man. And it works, and it gets the job done. They suck it up and get a stop when they need to. And Riley Leonard was, he was not very good for 3 quarters. It seemed like it took him a while to settle in. And but once he did, he put the team on his back and got the W.
I mean, is it fair to say that it takes players some time, especially when they transferred? I mean, he's played at Duke and now he's playing at Notre Dame. And his first
Yeah.
game is against his old head coach. Like,
I
there's a
mean,
lot of different things. Coming off an
dude,
injury. Wasn't he injured
he's
last year, too?
yeah, he got injured like mid-season. Notre Dame hurt him in that game. He got
Yeah.
injured in that game, and then like he tried to play against Florida State, and they were actually winning that game, and then he got injured, like re-aggravated the injury. But I mean, and even him, dude's like a fifth-year senior. He's never played in an environment like that.
No.
You know what I'm saying? And you talked about the Marcus Freeman hype video, and he referenced it in a press conference where he said, you know, it was intentional. He's like, you know, he turns around because the offensive line was leading the team out, and he sees two of the freshmen standing there, you know, and he's like, you know, those parental instincts sort of kick in where you're like, you know, you want to sort of like let them know, you want to take some of that pressure off of them and let them know that like, hey, like I'm like, this is exactly what we thought it was going to be. Like, I'm here with you. This is exactly what we thought. This is exactly what we wanted. And, you know, let them know that like, you know, we're in this together sort of thing. And, you know, so that was really cool to see because you don't really see that out of Marcus Freeman a whole bunch. And, you know, he's a pretty like mild-mannered, stoic guy most of the time when they show him. And that's kind of been oddly enough, a complaint from some Notre Dame fans. And we saw a little different version of him on Saturday night.
It was cool to see, but you talked about not making judgments after one game. I just want to remind everybody or tell everybody that in the first half of the Penn State West Virginia game, somebody sitting on this feed, I won't say who, texted me that, you know who sucks? Drew Allar. And then I believe he threw like 4 touchdowns after that. As the Nittany Lions went on to not only cover, but look really impressive in Morgantown. Would you be willing to say that that was you?
That was definitely me, man. He didn't look good in the first half.
And you went on to
Early on
say,
that
how
game.
come it is that the Big Ten can't recruit quarterbacks? Like, you went
It
all
seems
the
like
way.
they struggle to recruit elite quarterbacks. I still think that's a fair statement that the Big Ten struggles to
know.
recruit elite quarterbacks. I mean, and I guess what's your definition of an elite quarterback? Are we talking just purely elite at the college level? So you could say Justin Fields is elite at the college level. Obviously, it hasn't panned out for him at the next level.
No.
But I mean, how many elite quarterbacks have transferred out of the Big Ten to go be elite elsewhere? Joe Burrow, I guess
Yeah.
Quinn Ewers. We'll
Quinn
see.
Ewers. But did either of those guys really make any semblance of an impact at Ohio State? No.
They were shipped off campus before they
Correct.
had an opportunity.
Yeah. So there you go. So if you
I
want
mean,
to
maybe that just talks about their judgment. Their quarterback evaluation may not be great.
Yep.
But
and Joey Burr is doing just fine.
yeah, no, he is. But Penn State, holy smokes. I think the difference in that game, I'm assuming we're going to talk about that game briefly.
Yes.
The difference in that game, I think, was the moment, right? Penn State has, although they have not won any of them, they've played in a lot of big games here in the last couple of years against Ohio State and Michigan. And so the moment was not too big for them. I don't think they panicked. This is the biggest game played by West Virginia in probably a decade, maybe.
Yeah,
honestly.
probably.
Probably the most meaningful, impactful game they've played in a decade. And so a lot of hype, not having been in that environment, in that moment, with that sort of pressure and stress against a good opponent, I think that matters. And you know, I think what you saw to Penn State is similar to what you saw to Notre Dame, a team that has gone through their growing pains a little bit. They've ironed out some of these like kinks and like, you know, the reputation of choking in big games. Went on the road to Morgantown. Now, if it would have been a 7 p.m. start, maybe it would have, maybe things would have looked a little different. But they took care of business, man. And I don't think that it's an indictment on West Virginia. I think Penn State's actually, I'm going to eat crow for what I said last week because I was not drinking the Kool-Aid. I think Penn State is for real.
All right, that's fair enough. You're a man enough to admit when you were wrong. So we're going to go over a few of the week 2 matchups because we do want to spend more time in the NFL with a really intriguing slate of week 1 games for the NFL. So I think the biggest marquee game this weekend that you should pencil in on your calendars is Texas traveling to the Big House to face Michigan. Texas is a 7.5-point favorite on the road. Texas took care of business for real against Colorado State, looked really impressive. I think Sark has a team that could repeat as making it to the playoff, if not a national title contender. Michigan, on the other hand, I think they're rebuilding somewhat. And I know we both talked about the expectations being high, but this is a game where I feel like Texas, it's theirs to lose.
I feel like, Texas is definitely the better team on paper. They looked better through 1 week. I saw someone make this comparison. I was gonna send you the video on TikTok. They referred to Michigan as Iowa. They said Michigan is Iowa. Elite defense, and then they run the football. But then I heard it not too long before we came on. I watched another video. Brady Quinn was talking about this, how when he was at Notre Dame, they played at BYU week 1 and we're playing Michigan week 2. And so the last 2 weeks of camp leading up to week 1, they were doing Michigan prep. They were prepping for Michigan. And so then they show up to go play BYU, and BYU plays a completely different defensive front, completely different coverages, everything else. But like the coaching staff believed that, you know what, like we'll be talented enough to get by, but we'll be ready for Michigan. Well, they lost to BYU, but they did beat Michigan the next week because they were extremely prepared, but they bit the bullet to BYU because of it. And he's, basically the reference was that maybe Michigan was doing something like that against Western Kentucky, just trying to not show anything, they're playing 2 quarterbacks. So it's like, now you got to prepare for 2 different guys. Um, a very vanilla game plan. The defense is going to be good. I mean, so maybe there's a little strategy there. But what I would say is that's maybe getting a little too cute as a first-year head coach against a good opponent. We'll see. I mean, Sharon Moore is either going to be – I think this game is almost going to make or break him. I mean, they're either going to win and everybody's going to be like, holy crap, like this guy's for real. Michigan is still Michigan. Or they're just going to get the doors blown off of them. I don't feel like there's really any in between.
Yeah, Texas just feels so good. And like you said, if they are doing that, Michigan, I mean, that's a little too cute for a first-year head coach, especially coming up on your second game ever as the head coach there.
With
but
a lot of new players.
Yes, a lot of new players. And to move on to some other games, a couple of SEC teams are traveling on the road. Tennessee traveling to NC State, they're 8-point favorites. And this one actually intrigues me. Arkansas at Oklahoma State. Now, Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy, he is a guy who's been there for a really long time. Like, people forget that he's a man. He's over 50 now. So he has been there quite a bit. And the thing about Mike Gundy is he's won a lot, but not really won anything of substance. I think he's very similar to some of these other teams you're talking about, Penn State's, the Brian Kellys and stuff. And Oklahoma State's always that team that starts like 8-0. We feel good about them, and then they lose 3 out of their last 4, and they're out of the playoff. But this year, Mike Gundy has a real chance to make the playoff with the expanded playoff now. And Arkansas is a weird SEC team who they're not good, right? They're not terrible, but this could be one of those games that sneaks up on the Pokes, don't you think?
Yeah, maybe so. It's a good opponent, sort of similar circumstances to what Virginia Tech experienced, right? Um, good football program. You can't take anything away from Arkansas. I think that what's interesting about Oklahoma State and Mike Gundy is he seems to win games they're not supposed to win,
Yeah.
but then lose to inferior opponents. And I don't know if you could qualify Arkansas necessarily as an inferior opponent. I know on paper they are, but again, not to I'm just over here just loving on the SEC apparently, but it'll be very interesting, I suppose. But I think I don't know. I mean, I'm going to stick with the Pokes. I think that this is a game they win, and he does feel a little almost like Kirk Ferentz, huh? Like just very consistent. I think, but I don't know. Do you think that he doesn't get enough credit for how good of a coach he is because of like some of the shtick?
It's possible, but I also think that he isn't allowed to stay as long at a program that is of higher, they're like Oklahoma State's not a blue blood. Obviously, they have a lot of wins. They've done a lot of winning. They've had some great players. I mean, Barry Sanders obviously played there. But my point is like you can get away with being 8-9 wins and not really going to a playoff, winning a bowl game. And I think you could do that and have your shtick because at Oklahoma State, that's great. That's a lot of sustained success. And to be fair, sustained success is hard to come by and it's hard to keep. And so he's been able to do that. He just hasn't won, as you said about Brian Kelly, the games that matter.
Yeah, good enough to keep his job, not good enough to get hired away for a big time job. You never hear his name float around
Never.
with any of these major jobs when they open up.
And maybe that's by design. But then again, as you said, the shtick. I mean, he did take a shot at Connor Stallions this past weekend, which I thought was
I
pretty
thought it
damn
was
good.
funny. That was great.
I know, I thought it was good too. But I mentioned Tennessee and NC State. The reason I bring that up is NC State really struggled this week in their opener. And it might be what you said. They might have been thinking about Tennessee already, trying to employ some strategy, not show a lot, because that's a tough opponent for them. But SEC and ACC, I just feel like the SEC has the advantage there. But the game I know that everybody's going to be watching for a lot of reasons is Colorado traveling to Nebraska, renewing an old rivalry. And the reason why we're bringing this up is because, Coach, we got our very first voicemail to the show. Are you ready?
I am ready. This is really exciting.
Justice Wiggins, Jackson, Mississippi, and I don't think Colorado's in any trouble at all. I feel like, well, North Dakota State is a top FCS school, and I feel like FCS schools don't get enough respect. So, yeah, that's all I gotta say.
So first time, long time, obviously, for Justice from Jackson, Mississippi. And we want to give a special shout out. That was our first ever voicemail to the box. And I'll be honest with you, it's something that we talked about when it comes to Colorado, that maybe we didn't give North Dakota State enough credit, but I still believe that Colorado needs to look better against opponents like this because they're not going to surprise anybody. And if they're barely going to get out alive at home against a team that has a target on Colorado's back, what are they going to do when they have to go to some place like Lincoln, who's going to be ready for them?
Justice, thank you for the voicemail. You said two things that were correct: that North Dakota State is a good football program, and that there are some FCS teams that are very good that don't get enough respect. That Colorado is going to be okay is incorrect. I hate saying that, man, because we
Yeah.
have freaking pumped up Coach Prime in Colorado here on the show like for a year and a couple games now, and they got two elite players, three elite players maybe. Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, and the Jimmy Horn kid, and that's it. Shedeur was able to stay upright for the most part. The offensive lines maybe improved a little bit. The defense struggled. Um, I don't feel good about it, and I think that Nebraska is on the rise. I think Nebraska is going to have a really, really good season. We'll see what they get out of Dylan Raiola, a true freshman quarterback. But from a couple of the quotes I've seen floated out there, the kid seems extremely confident, and that's definitely one of the ingredients you need to be a successful Division I quarterback. And so and this is in Lincoln, I believe, right?
Oh, yeah. It's in Lincoln. And I
Um,
feel like
ugh,
Lincoln is one of those Blacksburgs. It's just waiting to be relevant again.
just been waiting longer than
A
Blacksburg's
lot
been waiting.
longer. Yeah, a lot longer since like 2001. I think that's the last time they went to a
Yeah.
national championship game. But Colorado, Nebraska in the 90s, it really meant something. And I agree with you that I think Colorado could be in trouble this year. And not because I want them to be. And I want to be very clear about that because we got a couple of comments that said whether they win or lose, you'll still be a hater. And I very promptly was like, real analysis is not hate, it's reality. Like, we're hoping that they do well. And yes, Coach Prime is going to do a great job in making sure that these kids do well at life overall. And at the end of the day, that's a really important aspect. But he was hired to be the football coach at Colorado, and he's hired to win. And if they don't win, they're not going to sell all the tickets. They're not going to sell all the merch. Like, you can only have that shtick for so long. And if they come into this game and they get the doors blown off them, how do they respond in game 3? And that's kind of what I want to see here. But I'm going to tell you what, Nebraska is not going to take them lying down. Lincoln is going to be so loud and ready for this game because they come in with a target on their back. Hard stop.
They do. I would be thrilled to see Colorado win this football game
Me too.
because man, college football. Remember how exciting the first few weeks were last year when Colorado was like ripping off wins, and we were like, "Holy shit, man!" Like I would, if they win this game, like we are on the cusp of some excitement like that, and so I hope that it happens because it would make this awesome season that we're getting into here even better. But I just I don't know. I don't know. And what Jeremy said here, what happens when this boy goes pro? Like I've wondered that. Like honestly, in my opinion, Dude, I think he's gone. I think I would not be shocked if this is his swan song at Colorado. And I know that's he's not going to say that publicly, but I think that despite all of the things that I like about Coach Prime, I think even he would tell you that he is very selfish, probably, and worried about his own self interest and his family's. And I think that somebody was in here, I think last week, that said him and his kid will both be in Dallas next year, which would
Yes.
be the most Jerry Jones thing ever to do.
But do you think
Um,
that's legitimate, though? Do you think that if Shadur goes to a team that is like the Cowboys, where they have a head coach that they're not in love with, or is at the end of their tenure? Like I would have said that maybe about Tennessee if Mike Vrabel was still there, but obviously he's not now. But the Cowboys are in that weird position where, remember, they're all in, and Mike McCarthy's their guy. Except when they once again lose in the playoffs, they have to fire him. And you're right, Jerry would love to have Deion Sanders as his head coach, and if he can quarterback or coach his kid, all the better for Dion.
I hate it, man. I hate being like so negative about it because
We're haters.
I like Coach Prime. I like what he's done. Well documented here. But holy crap. Like
We're haters.
if
Just
he ends
embrace
up
it, man.
if he ends up the head coach of the Cowboys, like you guys, I mean, you guys think that Mike McCarthy is not qualified to be an NFL head coach. And dude, maybe my opinion of what is required to be a head coach in the NFL is completely wrong. But my goodness, like I mean, hey, if he can take on like he's trying to do at Colorado, like that CEO role, I guess, and then just hire really talented coaches around him, maybe that's the ticket.
To be fair, I think you can do that in the NFL more so than in college, because in college you have to be tapped into recruiting and you really have to talk to these kids. Whereas in the NFL, it's a business. And I don't think Coach Prime can get through to pros, who a lot of them now, these younger generations, they don't care
You don't
what
think he
did.
can? I see.
I don't know. I see.
I think maybe he could.
Do you really? Because I think the pro today is just worried about getting the bag. And I know a lot of them want to win, but a lot of these younger people coming into the NFL, they don't give a crap what he did and who he was in the NFL.
Okay, if you are a wide receiver from wherever, I don't care. Elite 5-star wide receiver, you get drafted by the Cowboys. Coach Prime is the head coach. Are you more apt to take advice from someone that's been there, done that, that's a Hall of Famer, or Mike McCarthy? I mean, I'm just saying, if we're talking about this sort of CEO role, overseer, who do you think is more relatable to these young men, on a as far as maybe knowing where they come from, what they're about, what motivates them, so on and so forth. And I'm not saying like Mike McCarthy has won a lot of football games, right? I'm not taking away from him. What a Super Bowl, right? I believe.
Yes, one
Yeah.
of
So,
them.
uh, and so I don't want to take away from him too much. I know that Cowboys fans are pretty down on him, but like, I do think that Coach Prime would be able to maybe tap into something there that people like Mike McCarthy aren't able to. But then, like, not to use the chubby white guy stereotype, because Andy Reid has been very successful. You know what I mean? So it's maybe there's different ways to skin a cat. We'll see.
There are. Actually, I think this is a good segue to the NFL. But before we get there, a couple other games I want to mention to have on your radar. Boise State traveling to Oregon. The reason I mentioned that, Oregon a heavy favorite at home. They look kind of iffy against Idaho. I think Dylan Gabriel, he looked awesome. But with as much as as well as he looked, they did not look good on the scoreboard. So that's one to watch, because
Right.
obviously Dan Lanning and the boys have national championship aspirations, and they got to win these games and look good. App State traveling to Clemson. I mean, this is a game Clemson should win, but it's all about how do they look? How do they respond? And I think that's all that you really are looking for there. Marshall at Virginia Tech. Same thing. How do the Hokies respond? They're a heavy favorite at home. If they look bad 2 games in a row, I'm going to say that Brent Pry isn't ready for this moment.
Dude, Virginia Tech is living the Notre Dame season from 2 years ago. Notre Dame
I
went on the
hate
road,
you.
lost a close game to Ohio State, then came home and got beat by Marshall.
I hate you.
Like and you mentioned App State, giant killers, man, giant killers. The Mountain
Are
View
they
of
still
Appalachian State.
though, or are they still getting praise for 2007?
Well, they're about to be getting praised for beating Dabo, um, in the other Death Valley.
Wow. Okay, that's a big prediction there. And last but not least, Northern Iowa traveling to Notre Dame. Thing you want to look out for here
Northern
is
Illinois.
Northern Illinois. I had it written down here on the sheet, but does Notre Dame have a hangover from such a big game? Because sometimes coming down from that kind of game can be a little bit tricky, but I think Marcus Freeman will have the boys ready to go. A weaker college football slate than this past week, but still a lot of things to talk about. And next week, we'll talk about the results. I'm sure it'll be ridiculous. So let's move on to the NFL. And it's week one. And week one starts tomorrow night on Thursday. But this is an interesting season. There's a lot of storylines hitting in. And if you want to hear our opinion on the offseason and kind of our previews, you can go back to some previous videos on the YouTube channel. But week one, all except for one in terms of matchups, they're all intriguing to me. And I think that's not going to be the case moving forward.
Yeah, there's some great matchups this week, and it's because we're all operating off of assumptions, right? What we
Yes.
think these teams are going to be. Yeah, and as we get down the road here, and reality rears its ugly head, it's going to change things. But definitely some intrigue.
Yeah, I would say assumptions and questions because there are a lot of teams with intrigue because we don't know. But Thursday night, Ravens at Chiefs. This is a rematch of the AFC Championship game this past year that was very close. And I think this is one of those where I think that the Ravens need it more than the Chiefs because I think the Chiefs can come out, they lose a game, everybody still believes in them. Mahomes is the guy, Andy Reid's the guy, all that stuff. I think they can get a pass for one game, but I hate to say that a week one game is an early litmus test, but I think that it is for the Ravens.
So the NFL season is so long now that we've seen teams get off to slow starts and things like that, and things turn out just fine for them. So I don't know if we're going to learn anything necessarily on Thursday night. I think most people believe that these are going to be two teams that are challenging for the AFC and the Super Bowl. Um, but it will be interesting to see where they stack up right now. Right, where are they? Which team is getting off on the right foot the quickest? I do love that the NFL starts the season with a good matchup like this.
Me
Every
too.
year, which is nice. And it's that's one thing that's nice about college. I mean, yeah, sure, once in a while some teams get sort of depleted or this or that, but like in college, man, with the transfer portal, there's some of these teams are just getting like completely overhauled. Where in the NFL, there's more consistency from year to year, and so you can really make some assumptions and predictions based off of the last year's results, right? And I think we're in for a good game. This will probably be the only quality Thursday night football game all year long.
Most likely.
But we get it right out of the gates, man. And then we double up with action on Friday, which is wonderful.
I know you love Thursday night football, but we have Jeremy here in the comments taking the Chiefs at 8-9 in the playoffs and still not writing them off. The hottest of takes early on in the season. If the Chiefs
I
are
agree.
8-9, something happened.
I mean, it's Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Like as long as that duo is together, I don't think that you can not. I mean, same with Belichick and Brady, man. You can't write them off.
Don't disagree. And then, of course, we have football on Friday, and it's in Brazil, and that makes all the sense in the world for the NFL. But it's the Packers and the Eagles. I believe neither team is allowed to wear green, which is slightly strange
Stupid.
because both teams, their primary color is green. However, we have Jalen Hurts and we have Jordan Love. And the question here is Jordan Love got paid off of basically one season. How are the Packers going to look? Can they build off last year? Were they a year ahead? And you have said it, the weirdness in Philadelphia. You think it's going to continue? You think that it's a Nick Sirianni problem? And at the end of the day, if they're going to get rid of the quarterback or the coach, they're going to get rid of the coach first. It's kind of what I'm looking for. How do the Eagles look in terms of the weirdness? Because I think it tells me more about the Eagles than it does about the Packers personally.
Yeah, for sure. I think the Packers are going to be pretty good this year, no matter how this game pans out, barring some major injury or something. More curious, as you mentioned, about how things look for the Eagles. Just like, do they seem like they are, operating on the same page? Are they cohesive? Do there seem to be any sort of rifts? And I mean, most of the time at the pro level, even if there are personality conflicts, they do a pretty good job at putting that shit to the side for the interest of winning. But when it's the quarterback, it's a little different, I think, sometimes.
Yeah.
So, especially when it's a younger head coach, not an established head coach or whatever. So we'll see how things go. I agree. I'm very, very curious about the Eagles. I think it's going to be a good football game nonetheless. And yeah, Brazil, like my dad's like super triggered by this. I had to hear all about it earlier.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, it's a weird market that it doesn't seem like the NFL would want to go to. I mean, Tom Brady's not even dating Giselle anymore. So, like, what's the difference, right? So we'll see what happens. And speaking of Tom Brady, so in a game that completely hurts my heart, knowing that the Patriots are going to be god awful this year, the Patriots traveled to Cincinnati to face the returning Joe Burrow and maybe Jamar Chase. He did practice today, hasn't signed a long-term deal. We'll see how that goes. But the way I'm looking at this positively is this is year 0 for the Patriots. They're starting Jacoby Brissett. Their offensive line sucks. And so why put out Drake May if he's going to absolutely get murdered? And maybe over the course of the year, you start putting him in, get him some reps. But I'm not expecting anything out of the Patriots this year. And I think if we're looking at anything, it's how does Burrow look after another injury? And can Burrow stay healthy, quite honestly?
Yeah, curious to see how Joe Burrow looks coming off the injury. His career has been plagued by them to this point in the pro level, outside of the year they went to the Super Bowl. So I got to give the Patriots credit. Kudos to them for letting Drake May marinate
I agree.
and cook, because nobody does that anymore, right? And I mean, Aaron Rodgers got to do that. A lot of these other successful guys got to do that. And now it's play the young guy as quickly as possible. Normally it's because he's extremely talented and you're not paying him much, and so you're trying to pay all the talent around him and make your run. It seems like that's sort of the recipe for success sometimes in the NFL, at least for quick success. But the guy's got to be good enough. And I mean, it's worked out a few times. Worked out for like Russell Wilson in Seattle, but I mean,
He stole
it's
that
sort of
job.
lightning in a bottle, though. When that
Yes.
happens, it's not sustained success. And I think that the Patriots are handling this the right way for sustained success. And it's always tough to be the guy that follows the guy, right? We're talked about it with Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. What's his face in New England? I can't remember. Gerard Mayo,
Super Bowl champion. Put some respect on his name.
It feels a lot more like it just feels a lot more like Sharon Moore taking over for Jim Harbaugh. Gerard Mayo taking over for Belichick. Like it's because he was on the staff, right? And so
he was, yeah.
So it's like, okay, you hired a guy on the inside with the belief of trying to keep things probably mostly the same. I mean, operationally, maybe.
I think in some ways they're trying to change it, because I think Gerard Mayo, being a former player, especially in that organization, he hasn't done anything in the NFL that has been outside of the Patriots organization. So there's a lot of familiarity there. Obviously played under Belichick, but isn't trying to be Bill Belichick. And I think I really think that is what they're going for, is something a little bit different, because all the reports said that players hated it that last year. And some of it's due to Belichick. Most of it's due to his relationship with Bob Kraft, having nothing to do with the players themselves. And I'm sure that became a lightning rod for strife. And I think they're trying to reset everything. And so Bob Kraft, who is ancient, he looks like he belongs on British currency now. He honestly should, yeah, he could be in win now mode and try to rush this out. But he's playing the long game here, and he's given Gerard Mayo the ability to kind of ply his craft. And why get the kid killed? And I want to bring up a comment here about Drake May being like Joe Burrow in his first year. And Joe Burrow did get hit a lot his first year. He got crushed. And that's one of the things that has plagued him is injuries. And when you have a bad offensive line, just go ask how many rookie quarterbacks get killed their first year because they're on bad teams. And so let Jacoby Brissett go out there and do his thing, and we'll see what happens. I think that the Bengals are going to be fine if Joe Burrow stays healthy, especially if Jamar Chase plays. Expect them to win this game. I think organizationally the Patriots are doing the right thing. And then the
Jacoby
Steelers.
Brissett's no slouch.
No.
He's just getting old, I think.
No, he is old. You don't have to say getting. He is old. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. He's had a lot of reps. He's been with this organization. I think they're doing the right thing. But speaking of two franchises who are changing quarterbacks, Steelers at the Falcons. Now, this one's fascinating because the Falcons feel really good, I think, mostly about their guy. They signed Kirk Cousins to a big deal in the offseason, and then strangely drafted Michael Penix Jr., which was kind of odd because he's so old now in terms of rookie quarterbacks in the league. And then you got the Steelers who got Russ, traded basically peanuts for Justin Fields. It seemed like there was a quarterback controversy in the offseason. And in the end, Mike Tomlin was like, nope, Russ is our guy. And I'm kind of weirdly intrigued by the Steelers this year.
Yeah, there's definitely more drama around the Steelers than there's been in a while.
Yes.
And so that's interesting. I think that we talked we talked about this, I guess, when we did a little crunch time action, but this seems like the moment, right? The prime moment to doubt the Steelers, which makes me think that they're going to do the total opposite and come out and they're going to look great. They didn't look good in the preseason. Russ is old. Justin Fields, not very good,
I don't
at
think
least
so.
based on his performance in Chicago. There's not a lot there on paper to be optimistic about. And I feel like in some weird way, that's right where Mike Tomlin wants him, And
yeah, he's not scared.
no, not at all. And if he manages to make the playoffs, this might be one of his most impressive coaching years to date.
Well, this is a funny game, though, because if Russ or Kirk Cousins throws an interception early, much like you talked about with Notre Dame, the fan bases are going to be just, get him out of here. Like, both of these guys, I feel like, are on short leases for different reasons. I don't know if he's hurt or not, but Kirk Cousins comes with that weird primetime stigma
right.
that he can't do it in prime time. And I think Russ just maybe washed at this point. So this could be fascinating. I kind of wish we could go on a Steelers and Falcons message board to see what the fans are saying after the first bit of things not going well.
Kirk Cousins in Atlanta just feels so weird. I don't know how to explain it. It would be like I don't know. It's a strange fit, I think. So maybe it's a match made in heaven.
It probably is in some way. That's a good point.
Because Minnesota seems so appropriate.
Yes, and white is what you're talking to, I believe. Atlanta, I don't see Kirk walking around Hotlanta all that much. But hey, you never know. Kirk might be a man of the people. So moving right along, Kyler Murray and Maserati Marv are traveling to Buffalo. Now, it's not the middle of winter, so it should be decent weather up there in Buffalo to face Josh Allen and insert any other Bill offensive player that you know, because I can't name too many of them. But we both are kind of in the camp that you have Josh Allen, so you have a chance. But if the team around it is not very good, it could be a little bit of a down year. And who knows? Kyler Murray, is he better than the stature that people give him? I know that he's very talented, but traditionally quarterbacks of his size don't stick around too long and don't do too well. But now he's got a fancy new toy who's very, very fast. This could be an interesting one because I feel like the Bills should win this game, but it tells me a lot if Kyler and the boys are able to keep it close and if Kyler has a real connection with Marv.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see Marvin Harrison Jr. Guy's extremely talented. Being a Colts fan, obviously I was a big fan of his father. The guy's a great. And speaking of his father, though, takes me to Buffalo and Josh Allen. Yes, Peyton Manning had Marvin Harrison and he had Reggie Wayne. But also think of how many. I feel like Peyton Manning, if you're a great quarterback, you're able to make somebody out of some nobodies. And
True.
Is Josh Allen able to do that? Now, normally these guys were supplemental pieces to the Marvin Harrisons and Reggie Waynes of the world. Josh Allen doesn't have that right now. It doesn't seem, but I think that it's more important to have a great quarterback and at least some talent you can work with at receiver, even if it's unknown talent, than it is to have elite receiver play and not a great quarterback. So I would much rather be in the situation that the Bills are in than some other franchises. But I think it's certainly intriguing to see where are the Bills offensively and how quickly can Kyler and Marv get on the same page.
Should also be noted that DeMar Hamlin will be making his first start since his cardiac arrest, so that's a pretty cool storyline for those of you who like that sort of thing. Probably makes some people nervous, but still pretty neat. Titans and Bears, a matchup that we may never talk about ever again, but the only reason I want to bring it up is because you have Will Levis, who's going to be in his first season as the starter in Tennessee, And you have Caleb Williams, who's going to be in his rookie year with the Bears. A lot of people, and it's not just a lot of people, it's other people like in political football land, think that the Bears have a real shot of being good because Caleb Williams is going to do really well. And they have definitely put some pieces around him. I think that he is going to struggle a little bit because all rookies do, but I'm fascinated to see what he looks like. He's at home in his debut, and the Titans are a team that he should be able to do some things against because they are kind of on the downturn. What do you think?
So, man, I've really come like done a 180, man, on Caleb Williams. Coming out of college, I was not high on him at all. Had some serious doubts about his character. I never doubt his talent, but I think I just had more doubts about his character and like kind of what sort of what was he made of. Um, and I think Hard Knocks kind of pulled the curtain back on some of that a little bit. I haven't watched a ton of it, but I've watched enough to draw a conclusion. And for hearing some other stories along the way about the way that he handles himself with the team, and they're little things, but they're things that kind of speak volumes to someone like me. And the one, this is so insignificant probably to most people, but the one that sticks out is he's getting on teammates about picking up after themselves. And I'm like, that's like that. I mean, it's so small as that is, because he's like, these janitors, their job is like to clean the stuff that's actually dirty, not to pick up your mess or whatever. And as insignificant as that is, like that speaks volumes to me, because that's somebody that's got some self-awareness and that knows how to treat people, even the little people, if you will, that he doesn't turn his nose up at anybody. So I like that. And I'm, typically it's one of my favorite things during football season, living in Central Illinois, is making fun of Bears fans for their irrational behavior. And
No.
I
Sorry, Ryan
just
Muskis.
love it, man. Like, because it's such an emotional roller coaster. But I'm hopeful for them. I am rooting for the Bears. I'm rooting for Caleb Williams to be successful, because it is a lot of fun. Like, especially where I live, when the Bears are good, man, people are so jacked. And also because of that, no matter what happens on Saturday, good or bad, they will 1000% overreact in one
Oh, yeah.
direction or the other. There will be an intense overreaction. If they win, they're going to be buying Super Bowl tickets, and if they lose, someone will be putting for sale signs in front of his house or whatever. So it's they're a passionate fan base, although misguided at times. But I'm in their corner this year.
I love to hear it. So the next game, Texans traveling to Indianapolis to face the Colts. Richardson coming back, Stroud in his second year. How are you feeling about the Colts?
Gosh, I don't know, man. The Colts feel like the '90s Bulls. -5 championships, but they were great when they had an all-time great, right? One of the best to ever play the game. And I'm really fearful that they're going to sort of fall. I mean, the Bulls are sort of one of the most inept franchises in the NBA now. They've just kind of been garbage. And I'm really fearful that the Colts may end up there. Jim Irsay is kind of one of those owners that's a little off the rails. And so we'll see how things go. We got two young guys, right? Two second-year guys battling. The difference is one got hurt and didn't play hardly at all last year. The other one was the rookie of the year. So, has CJ Stroud, is he going to have a sophomore slump, or are they going to be ready to go? Because everybody thought the Texans were going to be completely dog crap last year. And yeah, and they were not. So we'll see. Are they ready to build on what happened last year? Can the Colts get on track? I mean, I feel like the Colts have been a fringe playoff team here for a couple, they're always right there, it seems. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if Anthony Richardson is the guy, if he can get him going. But I don't have a lot of strong opinions other than just my fear about or maybe my apprehension about the track of the organization as a whole.
A man that people have a lot of opinions on would be Tua Tagovailoa. So he is hosting Trevor Lawrence and the Jags. And this is interesting to me because this is what I would consider an embattled quarterback in Tua, who has put up good numbers in the system that he's been in. He's been hurt a lot, but when he plays, he's good. Just doesn't do it down the stretch. And then you got Trevor Lawrence, who was the next Andrew Luck. And I would say, and I think you said it too, that he really hasn't lived up to the billing. So this game is fascinating because both of these guys got paid recently, so they don't have to worry about the generational wealth part, but now they have to win football games. And I feel like this is the kind of game where the Dolphins would win because it's early on in the season. But I think that it says more about Trevor Lawrence here because I think that he, in my opinion, should have to show more because of the praise that he got, especially being the number one overall pick.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and Doug Peterson, he's a good football coach. This guy won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles, right? I
Is
mean,
he though?
and
So that's a good question though, because at what point do you become a mid head coach like let's say a Mike McCarthy or I'm going to say a Sean Payton? We all know how I feel about him, but both of those guys won one Super Bowl. Now, Doug Peterson did it with Nick Foles, but obviously a super talented football team behind it. And then things kind of fell apart after that. Has he been able to kind of get the machine rolling in Jacksonville? I don't know.
well, and I'll admit, man, I'm pretty ignorant about the makeup of Jacksonville's roster outside of
Who
Trevor
isn't?
Lawrence. I mean, but I mean, I mean, the guy's supposed to be extremely talented, and he is. But I mean, playing football at a high level in the NFL is something that very few people on the planet have been able to do. So, is he able to take that next step, be that guy? I'm very curious to see if the Dolphins, are they ready? They've kind of flirted with being one of the big boys here in the last couple of years. Like, can they really like take that step? I mean, especially in the AFC. I mean, it's been dominated by the Chiefs and the Bills, and you got the Bengals there. So, do they want to join the party? Very curious to see. I mean, how often this year do you think you see a sign that says "Hawk Tua Tagovailoa" in the
Nice.
stands?
I like where you're going. But let me see, here's an assertion. So, is it possible that Tua is a system quarterback that's working in this system, but Trevor Lawrence might be a better quarterback overall, but all the systems that he has had in Jacksonville just haven't worked to whatever his strengths are?
I do think that it's fair to say that Tua might be a systemish quarterback.
And if the system
Uh,
works, that's fine. I'm just
yeah,
saying I think he is.
um, yeah. Trevor Lawrence, I don't know, man. Like that's what's so interesting about seeing these guys that are elite at the college level is because they're generally surrounded by other elite players. Like, you might be the best quarterback in the country, but that receiver might be the best receiver in the country. That tight end might be the best tight end in the country. And four of your five offensive linemen may be the best at their position in the country. In the NFL, that's not the case. In the margin between the best guy and the best guy and the 20th best guy is very small. And so I don't know if it's an adjustment to playing with maybe not having head and shoulders the best talent on the field and playing against better talent regularly. If that makes sense. I don't know if I'm articulating it well enough,
No,
but
I get what you mean.
uh, yeah, I wonder some guys handle that better than others. Probably more handle it poorly than handle it well. I would think.
Things might have been easier at Alabama than they were or than they are in the NFL for Tua. I mean, I know they played in the SEC and they played a lot of hard teams, but the talent around him there was pretty damn good. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence had a talented squad as well, but I think that they played a little bit different. But I understand your
Yeah, like
point.
Josh Allen at Wyoming, the guys he played with are probably like accountants or
Yeah,
something.
they're
You know what I mean?
probably going to get me my rental car over at Enterprise here pretty
Yes, like
soon.
seriously though, like that's exactly the case.
Speaking of people that are going to be working at Enterprise, you got Danny Dimes and possibly even Brian Dayball as they host the Vikings this weekend. Now, this game on paper sucks because the Giants are probably not going to be very good. The Vikings are starting Sam Darnold, but the fascinating part to me, the Vikings are road favorites. That doesn't say a lot about the Giants to me.
Oh boy. No, it doesn't. Who's starting a quarterback for the Sam Darnold, right?
Yes, mm-hmm.
I mean, shoo boy.
And his like
Um,
eighth team.
I mean, yeah, and he has not shown anything anywhere. That is not good for the Giants. The once proud New York Giants. You hate to see it. The to pay Daniel Jones what they paid him is absolutely insane. I
A
wish
bargain by today's standards, though.
well, maybe so, but and then to let Saquon walk, like, all in the same off season is just very strange, but, um, Are there too many other places where you could be? We talked about this before, where you could, be as average or below average at your job, but get paid near the top of your field. Like
I don't know.
I mean,
I
just
mean,
based off like projections, most of the time it's like you get paid for work you've already done, right? Like, you earn, okay, like based off thing, you were probably underpaid, and then you get paid for sort of the accomplishments you've had. Where in the NFL, it's sort of like they are paying you for what they hope you do in the future. And I feel like there's
somewhat.
enough evidence there for Daniel Jones for them to like maybe pump the brakes on that a little bit. I was pretty optimistic about him coming out of Duke. But yeah,
Not at number 5 or whatever he was
things have
selected at.
not. Well, that's on par with the Mitch Trubisky pick, man. Just like, what in the hell are you thinking?
Yep. But it's
And
also
I'd like to see
indicative.
the list of like who was chosen after him in that draft at the quarterback position. Who was
That'd be
chosen
fun.
after Daniel Jones, and pull that up. But
That'll be fun. I'm
uh,
sure that would probably be
yeah.
a good show. Poor Daniel Jones. But I mean, I assume if this year doesn't go well, they may even sit Daniel Jones at some point. But is Dayball safe? Do you think that they just try and move on with a new quarterback with this coach because maybe that's not his guy?
I don't know. I think part of it depends on just how much. I mean, I don't know what the relationship is like with him and the GM and the owner. I think the GM might be in more trouble than Dayball, possibly.
Yeah,
But
that's fair.
at the end of the day, though, if you're not winning games, somebody's got to answer for it. And how quickly can you move off of a quarterback that you're paying that much to?
I mean, I'm sure there's accountants that get paid a lot of money to figure that kind of stuff out. But they did draft Malik Neighbors this year, who was a great receiver out of LSU, another guy that Brian Kelly lost. So he has weapons. He should be able
Yeah,
to
so
make
we'll see.
something work, but I don't know. It's just not a good look when the Vikings, who just lost their rookie quarterback, are favorites on the road against your team.
No.
Raiders and Chargers. So Jim Harbaugh starts his NFL debut part due at home, and he's got Justin Herbert. He's got a team that on paper should be talented. The Raiders on paper shouldn't be very good, but they've got the pesky Gardner Minshew as their starting quarterback. So you're always sort of in it, probably sort of out of it too. I believe that Jim Harbaugh is going to be fine because he's been fine everywhere that he goes. Like, I do not doubt that he's going to do something. The question that I have is, are the Chargers cursed, and can he actually get over that?
So yes, I think that Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers are going to be successful. I feel
I
very
agree.
good about that. In terms, I feel like, so on the Raiders side, I'm on record, big Gardner Minshew fan.
Yes.
Is he going to be? Is he like the Ryan Fitzpatrick of this
He,
generation? Like
he might be now. Yeah.
journeyman quarterback. Plays for a bunch of franchises, but also wins a lot of games. Just doesn't win enough to like be a franchise guy.
Never wins enough in the moments you need him to win enough.
Right.
The moments you need him, as Jets fans, he throws 4 picks.
He's good enough to get you to the moment, just not good enough to win in the moment.
Yeah, you take him to the dance.
like Brian Kelly.
Brutal.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But
You're right.
no, I feel good about the Chargers. It might take them a year to really compete to win the AFC. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll find out how bad of a coach Brandon Staley was real quick, I think.
Yeah, I was not a fan.
No, and this days in the modern NFL, it's so difficult to have a defensive minded head coach. It just it just doesn't jive. And especially if you don't, I don't know, if you don't have elite talent on offense to sort of offset your filtered perception of what's I don't know. You can't have a defensive minded head coach. That's my opinion.
Yeah, not in today's NFL. So, Broncos at Seahawks. Now, my boy Sean Payton is starting Bo Nix, I believe, and Bo Nix was made a captain of this team. So, Sean Payton is trying to recreate Drew Brees and an older quarterback that is known for throwing the ball like 6 yards down the field in college, basically. That's what he did at Oregon. And then you've got Geno Smith, who is definitely in his last year. Pete Carroll is no longer there. They're a team I feel like that if you get one injury, like Tyler Lockett's old now. What the heck is his name?
DK Metcalf's old too, right?
Yeah, DK Metcalf. He's not old, but he's definitely not getting any younger. I feel like one of those guys goes down, the season is on the line. But I think really, is Sean Payton washed? That's the question that I want answered. I'm not sure Bo Nix is the guy to do that with long term.
I don't know, man. Broncos country, let's ride. I
That
think
did
that
not work the last 2 years, by the
I,
way. Just stop.
I don't know, man. I feel good about the Broncos. I think this might be like
Are you serious? Come
I'm
on.
dead serious, man. Like I
Oh,
think that I don't think as poorly of Sean Payton as you do. I'll say that. I think that the Broncos have a chance to be decent. Uh, they play in a tough division because I think the Chargers are going to be good. Obviously, the Chiefs are really good, but we'll see about the Raiders. But I mean, I think they're going to be okay. I think they're going to be much improved over last year. Bo Nix will take his lumps, but if Sean Payton is the offensive guy that everyone portrays him to be, then because there's at least today you can still blame a lot of what happened last season on Russ.
yes, you
Today.
can. You're
Now
right.
we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with the Steelers and the Broncos, and the proof will kind of come out. But I think that the Broncos are going to be okay.
Good for you. I do not. I am not
I love it. I
not a
love that we
Sean
have
Payton
this.
guy. I
I
hate
love
that.
that we
I
have this.
cannot stand him. Cowboys at Browns. So this is fascinating to me because the Browns, I think, are assumed that they're going to be good, but we don't actually know if Deshaun Watson is very good. Now, they did restructure his contract to make some room. Myles Garrett, I think, is going to be elite as he always is. Nick Chubb is probably not going to be back. So this is an interesting team that maybe is lacking a few weapons. On the other side, you get the Cowboys coming in who are all in, as we've discussed. And Mike McCarthy has this team with Dak who didn't get paid. CeeDee Lamb did get paid. I think he's the highest paid receiver, like second highest paid receiver in the league or something like that. So he got paid. The question is, the Cowboys have talent. Are they going to be able to finally shine in the moments that we now know them not to shine in? I think Dak is 2-5 in the playoffs as a starter. And I don't know. I'm down on the Cowboys this year because I think that they're not all in the way that Jerry thinks that they're all in. And I'm wondering if maybe some of the players, looking at Dak specifically, are already thinking to next year.
Well, I don't know if you've been to Cleveland or when the last time was, but nothing shines in Cleveland at all. And isn't it funny too at the same time how just one calendar year can essentially push Deshaun Watson's off the field issues into oblivion, where no, you know what I mean? It's just long gone.
Screw
Nobody
him.
even considers it anymore. And he looked good when he played, so that's all that matters to people. And I think we knew that last year too. But definitely a sort of an intriguing matchup because the Cowboys always come with tons of expectations, and Cleveland desperate for a winner. They paid Deshaun Watson a bunch of money to be the guy, and you know, I I don't know, man. Like it's just I have a hard time picking a game like that because I'm with you. I'm not as anti McCarthy and Dak as some people might be, but I'm certainly not like pro McCarthy and Dak. Um, they are very, very just less than great. Like that's
Solid,
what you
if
know what I
not
mean? Yes.
spectacular.
Yeah. And so but that's not enough, right? That's not enough
No.
for Cowboys fans. That's not enough in the NFL. But um if they lose to Cleveland, then I feel like that makes things a little more interesting, don't you?
Oh, the fan bases are just going to go insane, and you're going to get it one way or the other. I mean, the
Is
Cowboys
is
are like Notre Dame.
is there a point where Mike McCarthy loses his job midseason?
No, I don't. I
Think
mean, they'd
so?
have to be really bad.
But
Like,
I think that like Jerry Jones, like he's never fired a coach midseason, right? Has he?
I don't know if he has or not, but all I know, I keep saying he kept Jason Garrett for that long with not that much to show for it. So I don't think he's going to get rid of Mike McCarthy in the middle. Yeah, clapping for sure. Hall of Fame clapper, absolutely. In the same Hall of Fame as Pete Carroll with his gum chewing. Two more matchups to go. Matt Stafford and the Rams traveled to Detroit to face your boy, MCDC, and the Lions. I like to call him Man Campbell. It doesn't really matter. But the point is, Matt Stafford, I feel like, has got to be on his last leg as a good starter in this league because he's getting old. He's been hurt. And Man Campbell and the Lions are coming off a season where they almost made it to the Super Bowl. It's going to be a lot of expectations here. It's a playoff rematch. And I feel like this is the kind of game, though, that Dan Campbell's the perfect coach for. Like, he's not going to let them overlook this game. He's not going to let them get super deep into the emotion of this game. It's the first game in a very long season. He's going to have them ready, in my opinion.
Well, what I think we're going to see is in the modern era of football, of professional football, is the gritty toughness, like bite the kneecaps mentality is that have staying power, right? And of course, I think you can get people to buy into that when you're winning, like they did last year, and we'll find out how entrenched that culture is in Detroit. I think, I hope it's well entrenched because I love it, and I would love nothing more than to see them go back and have a chance to go to the Super Bowl. But I mean, there's not a fan base that deserves it more, in my opinion. This matchup, though, I think after losing there last year, in the NFC or no, excuse me, to go to the NFC Championship game, I think that the Rams are going to come back this year. Like, you're going to have the emotion of the moment of Matt Stafford's return. I think that it's going to be business as usual for them. I agree. Matt Stafford is probably on his last lap here, as a, you know, uh, an established starter, I would imagine. So at least as far as someone that's got the physical tools to do it at a high level. So I mean, I expected the game to be competitive, but I'd have a hard time picking against my boys, man. And so for that reason, I like the Lions.
I think a fascinating narrative that's not being talked about is you got Sean McVay, who's seen as this like high-minded coach, and then you have Dan Campbell, who is seen as this gritty coach, but he also plays into analytics. And on the heels of last year, where a lot of people were skeptical about the use of analytics and the decisions that Dan Campbell made in the biggest game of his coaching career, and it will be interesting if he does that again, if he sticks to his guns, which I think that he will, how that's perceived. If they start losing games more frequently because of some of the decisions that he makes. And it's funny though, because as you said, he's an older school kind of mentality when it comes to biting the kneecaps and stuff, but he's very progressive when it comes to the way that he coaches the football team in game. That's something that I'm looking forward to seeing is how he handles that. Does he change it up a little bit? He doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would though.
Yeah, I don't think so. And I mean, come on, like that they showed the guys doing up downs with the team in training
You love
camp.
that stuff. I know you
Oh
do.
my gosh, it's so I just yeah, I mean, as a player, man, how do you not just respect the hell out of that guy? Because that guy's not asking you to do anything that he's not willing to do himself. Um,
You're so
and I
old.
mean, but seriously, man, like you got to take that. I mean, that deserves respect. If you're watching that, and then or you see insert random whoever head coach cruising around practice on his golf cart or whatever, you know,
Sean Payton,
probably. I mean, give me.
asshole.
I don't know, man. Like I feel like Dan Campbell is the kind of guy that if you ran into him somewhere, he would not big time you at all. He would treat you just like any other person and be the most genuine. I mean, I think he'd be exactly the person that you see. I think that he is the most genuine coach in the National Football League.
I think that's fair. He'd hopefully buy me a beer if I saw him,
I
but
think he would.
he
He'd
probably would come
probably
on the
like
show too. He just loves
drink his
stuff like
chug
this.
a bottle of beer and smash the bottle over his head.
That's right. And last game is intriguing because it's Aaron Rodgers again making a Monday night debut for the Jets again, just not on September 11th. And the question is, will Aaron Rodgers play more than 4 snaps? He has to. But I think really, if we're being serious, how do the Jets look this season? And this is a big game for them because historically, Rodgers hasn't looked good against Kyle Shanahan led 49ers teams in the last like 5 or 6 years. And it's a big hurdle because the 49ers, I think, are perceived to be really good. We talked about how there is question marks. I mean, Ayuk's there now, but is there weird drama in the background? And do they really believe in Brock Purdy? Questions remain here, but this feels like the kind of game that the 49ers can lose and still be okay, much like the Chiefs. We need to see it from the Jets.
Yeah. I mean, it's so weird you say that, like that he hasn't performed well against Kyle Shanahan teams because Kyle Shanahan's almost like he's known as an offensive guru, right? But maybe that gives
49ers
you
teams.
a unique insight. Maybe that gives him a unique insight into how to stop Aaron Rodgers, right? How to stop a good offense. But I, I mean, yes, the Jets have had some internal strife a little bit, but I mean, what team doesn't? I guess during training camp with holdouts and everything else, and I think the guys just realized to some degree it's just business. But I I don't know, man. I'm hopeful. I think that it would kind of bum me out to see, you see Rodgers go to the Jets, get injured, and if he were to come out this year, just the guy's a really talented, really good quarterback, and to see him go out like that would be rough. And so I wouldn't mind seeing him having like a Brett Favre-esque like finish to his career where he's still competing and making the playoffs and stuff like that. And the Jets are one of those fan bases too that when the Jets are good, they're fun. And it's a fun fan base to have engaged throughout the season and into the postseason. And obviously, I mean, our boy Cleve, right?
Yes.
Nobody deserves a winner like Cleve.
And that's what you said about the Lions. And so that means that nobody deserves a winner more than Dave. But I think a player to watch in the
Lions
Jets
and Jets in the Super Bowl
this week would be Breece Hall, because there's a lot of young talent. But I think having a young, explosive running back on a team with a 40-year-old quarterback coming off of that kind of injury could actually probably add some years or some snaps to Aaron Rodgers' career. And it'll be interesting to see how they gel together. This was supposed to be year 2, so they were kind of supposed to ascend last year, and this was supposed to be their year. They've got to do it all now.
So I might be wrong, but I feel like in 2 seasons that he has been hurt in the first game of the season, like season-ending injury. I think he got hurt against the Bears
He
a
did,
few
but he
years ago,
played that
and it
whole
was
season,
week
though.
1. Did he? I thought he like broke his collarbone or something.
No, remember that was the game where he had no ligament in his knee, and he still came back and ended up throwing like
Wasn't
5
that like a hip
touchdowns.
drop tackle or something like that too?
It was
maybe,
something
or
like
what?
that, yeah. He couldn't scramble worth a
Okay.
damn, but he was throwing
I
dimes.
thought okay.
And
I thought he like missed the season.
he effing owns them. Don't forget
No,
that.
because who the hell, dude? Because he got hurt early in the year one year.
We'll have to
And
send this off to the interns to figure out. Because
yeah, then they I can't remember.
where's your
the
dad?
name
Get your
of the-
dad
I
in
can't
here.
remember the name of the guy that played backup for him, but he was not good at all.
I know who you're talking about. You're talking about the guy who played at Notre Dame, the quarterback for Notre Dame.
No,
Yeah, wasn't it the guy Kayshawn? Oh shoot, I'll remember the name after we're done.
no, Deshaun Kaiser. No,
Yeah, thought he was
No.
really bad.
yeah, no, no. This is probably before that dude even played at Notre Dame. I don't know. We'll have to look it up later.
We will
Get
look
the
it up.
interns on it.
Yeah, we'll get the interns on it. Your
Put it on the poll, Guillermo.
65-year-old intern that you have sitting in the next room who can look it up for us and bring it to you on paper. Well, we went through all the week 1 NFL matchups. We'd love to know what you think. As of course, if you're listening here, call in 703-718-6314 is the number to do that. Be like Justice from Jackson, Mississippi, and leave us a first time, long time voicemail. However, before we get out of here, we do have a little bit of business to finish up with. Iceman stat of the week, as always. Coach, I have a stat this week about rookie quarterbacks. Are you ready?
Love me some rookie quarterbacks, Iceman. Can't wait.
Well, we talked about Caleb Williams earlier, so this stat is apropos for him. However, the last 15 quarterbacks to be selected number 1 overall have a combined record of 0-14-1. Can you name the last quarterback to win his debut selected number 1 overall?
Oh boy, last quarterback. I'd have to like know the quarterbacks that were selected number 1 overall.
It's a super ironic one, too.
Is it really?
Yes.
I don't know. Andrew Luck.
It would be David Carr in
Oh,
2002. Wow. I know. And that was
Was
for
that the only game he ever won.
I know. That's why I said it's super ironic. But you go through the list, and all these guys, some of the stats were horrible in their first game. 4 INT game for Alex Smith. He obviously ended up being okay. I mean, you got a lot of names of guys who were picked number 1 overall. And just because that stat is there doesn't mean Caleb Williams can't win this game this weekend or mean he's not going to be fine. But certainly the numbers don't look good for guys that have been selected since David Carr to make their debut. But David Carr was so funny because that's the guy who everybody talks about. When you talk about Drake May, that's the example that I think of. The guy who gets obliterated and his career stinks.
No, I agree. And I'm glad they're protecting him from that.
I am too. Now, we need to protect people from their money. So, of course, we need to make a pick of the week. Coach's pick of the week. And for the first time ever, Coach is 4-0 in making his picks because he put his heart over his head last week and picked Notre Dame outright over Texas A&M. And wouldn't you know it, they came through. So, Coach, we know that you are a prognosticator, and we know that people want to lose some money gambling because, as I found out this week, more people spend money on sports betting than they do on investing in any other way. So please bless us with your picketh of the week.
Hear ye, friends. I give you this advice. If you want to bet against me, do me a favor. Just send me your money. I can spend it better than you can. This week, we have a matchup between two blue bloods, two college football powerhouses who have had a recent return to relevance. One more so than other, but I think we're in for a unique matchup as an SEC program travels north of the Mason-Dixon line for one of the few times in the last decade to take on the former national champion Big Ten team, the Michigan Wolverines. The spread here is 7.5 in favor of the Texas Longhorns. We spoke earlier about maybe Michigan was playing a little cat and mouse last week, week 1 against Western Kentucky, trying not to show too much. But, my friends, I think that Michigan just isn't very good. I agree with the person who said they think Michigan is essentially the Iowa Hawkeyes. Elite defense with a subpar run first, run always offense. The unfortunate part, they did that last year. Unfortunate part this year, they're just not talented enough to do it. Texas has a great offensive head coach. They have an elite quarterback with, returning college football playoff team. Give me the Texas Longhorns minus 7.5 in the big house over the Michigan Wolverines.
The Texas Longhorns giving 7.5 over the Michigan Wolverines in the big house. Coach, so let it be written. Hook 'em, so let 'em be done. And that about concludes our coverage of this week's Football Frenzy. Coach, you got anything for everybody before we get out of here?
No, thanks for everybody, man. Thanks for hopping in the chat. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the voicemail from Justice from Jackson. Hopefully he gets back to us at some point with some other opinions or takes. I encourage everyone else to do the same. Looking forward to another great weekend of football. So pumped that this show is back in full swing for football season, and just really appreciate everybody.
I couldn't have said it better. Thanks to everybody who is in the chat. Thanks to everybody who calls in, who supports us in any way. If you listen to us in audio, rate, review, all that stuff. If you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And honestly, any way that you support us is good enough for me. We hope that you enjoy your football weekend. Coach and I will see you next week for Football Frenzy. Have a great day, everybody.